2019 Summit Q&A replay, balancing automation and a personal client experience with Sam Mollaei, Maddie Martin, Dave Aarons, Jan Roos, and Seth Price. Episode 179. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and we are continuing these replays of the 2019 Summit's live Q&A portion. And today is a snippet from day 2. Day 2 was our sales day. This Q&A, I think, had the most number of speakers on the speaker panel that came to the live Q&A. This particular question that we're playing does not have all the speakers speaking in it. So we just listed the names of the speakers in the title of the episode. If you're not familiar with the voices, they're not introduced as they're saying their responses. They're not all introduced as they're saying their responses to the question. But hopefully, if you follow in chronological order, they basically go in order of the questions. Now, why are we sharing these Q&As with you? Well, we want to give you a taste of what you can experience at the Law Firm Growth Summit, because our event, at the time that this is getting released, our event is the next day. Our event is tomorrow. So I'm not recording this on Monday, but it is getting released on Monday, February 8th. And the Law Firm Growth Summit 2021 kicks off on Tuesday, February 9th. Now, we have lined up an incredible array of speakers, 35 in total, and an incredible list of topics. We're super excited about everything that we're bringing to you, including the experience. We recently announced that we're going to have a live concert. We're going to have a live country band playing on stage at 8 p.m. Eastern on the first night of the event. We're going to have a live Q&A. This time we're just doing one, but we're going to have a live Q&A on the second night, Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we have a full slate from 10 a.m. Eastern to 6:30 p.m. Really packed schedule for you. We built in breaks. We want you to be able to get up and stretch, but we have a lot of information to cover to help you grow your practice. And if you've been sitting on the fence trying to figure out whether this is something you should attend, now is the time to make a decision. And one of the things that I harp about on this podcast all the time is that the thing that separates the successful law firm owners from the ones who struggle and try to succeed at their goals but year over year and just don't seem to be making progress, the difference between the two is primarily taking action. It's primarily the ability to make a decision, get out of that point of indecision, make a decision, and move forward. So most of my listeners probably already signed up for the event. But if you're one of the people who has not been sure whether this is something that you want to tune into, make a decision. This should be your first action that you take on your road to a brand new beginning for you. We have some really amazing stuff for you. So we're going to go into a question that's asked by attorney Michael Ziegler. And one of the things that Sam Mollaei in his talk on day 2 covered was how you can automate your sales process. And he basically said, hey, look, I'm going to be thinking about automating my firm, but I'm afraid I'm going to lose the human connection, that touch point that I have by doing things manually. And that sparked a great conversation, and you're going to get to hear that now. So before I jump into the Q&A, I'm just going to move over to our sponsor of this podcast and just play a quick advertisement of them for you. Please listen to them. One of the reasons that we're able to do this for you is because of the financial backing that we have from our sponsors. So we want to make sure that you give them a shot, try them out. So we're going to go over there in a second, but real quick, Get your ticket now free at the lawfirmgrowthsummit.com, lawfirmgrowthsummit.com. Also, the link is in the description of the episode. The link is in the show notes, lawfirmgrowthsummit.com. Let me share an exciting tool that I recently came across that is a game changer for law firms that bill hourly or by the project, otherwise known as flat fee billing. The 2020 Legal Trends Report published by Clio rates how important various items are in a client choosing your firm. You may be surprised to know that the third most important decision factor for someone choosing a lawyer is the ability to pay with a payment plan. The challenge that law firm owners face is the risk of a client not making good on that payment plan. Most attorneys don't offer payment plans because of that. The problem is now solved with LawFunder. LawFunder allows you to easily add a payment option to all your client invoices and retainer replenishment requests that does not require credit checks, applications, or any other complex process. The client's able to use their existing credit cards, allowing them to earn points and miles, access credit card specials on interest rates, and any other tools they use to manage their cash. When I saw this tool, I was blown away. Most importantly, it removes all the risk from the law firm and makes an easy and painless process to the payment process. So if you want to check off the box on one of the top factors in new client decisions, if you want to decrease your accounts receivable and get paid immediately, LawFunder is the solution. Go to lawfunder.com. That's lawfundar.com/profitwithlaw to learn more.
So terrific presentations, everyone today. Some great content and stuff that was genuinely insightful. So really appreciate all the efforts. The question that I posed on Facebook is directed towards Sam, but I'm sure there's a few folks that could really add some value to this. And it's striking the right balance between automation and client interaction. So particularly in line with Sam's theme, I'm a believer in automating as much of the practice as you can, but I find that there's a tipping point where, of course, the client is paying us for a service. They want kind of the traditional connection with a professional where they want someone that they can talk to and feel like is engaged in their case. And so the question is, how do you strike that right balance between automation but also client engagement where they're feeling the love, so to speak? Thanks.
So it's kind of counterintuitive because you think automation actually takes away from that personalized service, but actually, if you think about it, it could improve your system and actually improve your customer service. How and why? It's through optimizing exactly your messages that you're sharing with your clients over time. So let's just say I have an EIN service, something that's very standard. I basically first have to get them to answer some questions. I fill out the paperwork. I send them back to them to sign and scan. I get it. I tell them very specific thing what they should expect next. And then in 2 or 3 weeks, they get the result. So that communication, all that back and forth has been optimized over time to be very straight to the point and be very clear on that process. And that's being optimized over time. So I could say that in the past 4 years, I've tweaked those emails and things that I say to make it as smooth as process and make it as efficient and as possible. So I think in the beginning, when somebody hits you up, that's where you want to be the most personalized. So that means you take whatever that they need, you personalize that, and you send that off. But after that, from that point on, the follow-up system to the actual the onboarding system to offering to you taking care of their service, that could be optimized over time which actually helps the clients overall. Does anybody want to add to that?
I would love to add to that. I completely agree. I think that technology reduces human error and it makes us more accurate and faster. It also can provide a competitive advantage. So we have a client, Justine Nickel, who's in a bunch of the Facebook groups. She's a maximum lawyer, and I've presented with her CLEs, and what she's done, I know like her intake process pretty well, is basically she is a criminal defense attorney in Colorado, and what she's been able to do is serve clients who need such a fast turnaround time for her to appear in court the next morning that like they contact her or a family member contacts her or a friend. They fill out, they give the information. They basically are able to, work with them to sign the agreement. it triggers automatically an invoice for payment. And as soon as that payment is made, she gets to work on the case and she's able to show up at court the next morning. Like, there are very few people who can create a system that screens, qualifies, retains, and takes payment for work that efficiently. So she's not only able to show up, but she's working with the clients who she wants to serve and who really need help in a situation where not a lot of people can come in and assist.
Maddie, we have a question from Rachel in the chat. She wants to know how she does conflict checks that fast.
She actually has, I think, someone to help do conflict checks. We're actually doing conflict checks now, so we'll be able to assist with that for clients. But I can find out more information on that. That is an important part of the process for obviously criminal defense, family law, a lot of different areas where you need to make sure that your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed there.
Yeah, and the practice area is important because some practice areas, conflict checks are really a non-issue. So,
Right.
There's certain practice areas where there's no adversarial party. There's not really much of a conflict anywhere. Anybody else have, if you have something to add, just raise your hand. I don't have to go around the room for everybody. I know that there's some people who are not on video. Dave, let's go to you.
Yeah, I mean, the interaction with the client always needs to be personal. When we're talking about being an attorney and a counselor of law, I think that's something that we've seen lost in some online software programs, is we've lost the relationship between the client and the attorney. And so where attorneys we're seeing, at least in our network, using automation is not in, because I think a lot of people, when they think of automation, they think of like a cold robotic process where they're losing that connection. Whereas when we think about it in terms of automation, automating, streamlining intake, document assembly, follow-up reminders, it's usually the things that are, how do we take this information and process it into the infrastructure that we have to work in that local court. That could be the forms, that could be how do we get this information from the client, get it into those forms, get it into the practice management software. How do we do the things that we're maybe as humans not necessarily as good at, in terms of sending series of follow-ups, reminding ourselves to do things that we otherwise might forget, right? And so these are the things that might fall through the cracks or might just take longer than they should. And a lot of times what we're talking about is data entry, collecting information from the client, putting that into forms, and then also setting reminders and so forth to make sure we're meeting deadlines and these types of things, to make sure that whatever mistakes we might make in the past, we have reminders and backups and redundancies to prevent those things from happening, and also just overall streamlining the things that we're going to be doing repetitively over time. When people think of AI, they think of it as like some robot that's going to like solve all these things, but really what it is just as you do things more and more over time, you don't have to repeat those things because your process becomes better and better. And so the things that are repetitive just become done automatically over time. And that just makes us more efficient so that you can focus more of your time on interfacing with your clients and practicing law in the courtroom, and of course reviewing the documents and working with them, instead of having to write forms and do things that take time and take you away from the interaction with your clients.
I have an update from Justy. I just texted her so that I could get the answer to that question about the conflict checks. She said that she uses Google Sheets and she has an admin assistant who does it when they get the consult. So they actually ask up front for names and other related people, anything related that would be found in a conflict check. And the admin assistant does it as soon as the consult comes through, which she does for free for the first 30 minutes. And then she charges after that time. So that she has all the information at intake to kind of like handle the entire process and it doesn't get delayed.
Okay, so Rachel asked a follow-up question. So she doesn't have a large firm to screen. It's primarily her.
Right. It's a two-person practice. It used to just be total solo.
Okay. I would imagine that you can scale that process. In other words, that once you're using a database to be able to do your conflict checks, if you're entering, like, let's say you're using Clio as a practice management software, if you're entering everybody that you've had a relationship with in some way or another as a contact, then by searching for the related parties in your database, it'll pop up, and then you can try to figure out from that hit what kind of relationship you had with them. So there's definitely a way to leverage the technology that you have to still do that, even if it's a larger firm. I'd like to get Jan's input on this question, specifically on the sales side, because I know that you talked a lot about automating the follow-up process. And what do you think about this touch point, the in-person or personal touch point versus a lot of the automation you talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to kind of think about just hold in your mind simultaneously these two complete polar opposites. You've got the one, like, let's call it just legal Zoom, end to end robots, there's never any human interaction. And on the other hand, you've got, the complete most old school solo ever who does everything that you could possibly do. And honestly, the answer, I think, depends on where you are in your career, and also, the highest and best use of your time. Like, if we kind of take the example out of the law, let's imagine that you're going for heart surgery. Would you be particularly miffed if the surgeon wasn't the person who answered your phone? I'd probably guess not. And I'd also say if the surgeon was the person answering the phone, it would actually cause you to doubt how serious they were instead of the other time around. So I think on some level, doing a lot of the follow-up yourself can actually be negatively perceived. So the other thing too, though, is that, I think people have a different bandwidth for this kind of thing, follow-up being one of them, but just also human interaction in general. I don't want to assume that everyone's an extrovert. And if you got 40 conversations you can have in a given, a week, let's say, it's probably better off if those are interactions that you're having at a higher level. I would say a consult or stuff that you have to do that's really, really key to the case that no one else can do. So, I mean, this is kind of old school E-Myth stuff, but whatever the highest and best use of your time is what you should be doing it on. Personally, I think follow-up is something that it helps to have a personal touch, but my opinion is that it's outweighed by just kind of the tedious nature of it. And for the most part, a lot of these experiments that we've been running with clients, it's like the follow-up itself is what's driving the results. It's not some clever turn of phrase that only you could do. So I think for the most part, you're probably getting most of the benefit from doing it, period. And also kind of on the point that Maddie was saying earlier, it's like, it's a lot of these things are very easy to slip through the cracks. So my overall kind of response on that is I generally think it's more valuable, I guess, deeper in the funnel, if you want to look at it for a marketing perspective, or higher up in the value chain, if you want to look at it from that perspective.
Okay, and I think Maddie has something more to add.
Just really fast. So I totally agree with you. I also think that it doesn't just have to be lawyering work. So what we often hear is, I have enough time, I just hung my shingle, or I'm not fully booked yet, I can answer my calls myself. And the fact is, like, there are a lot of things that only you can do that you're really great at. So like building your network is one of the most important things that probably only you can do. That's really hard to outsource. Maybe it's writing and building your community online and offline. There are a lot of things that if you have the benefit of time right now, it still isn't necessarily the case that you should be using it for these other tasks like answering the phone and emails. The second thing I'll say is that Lead Docket showed that it takes at least 6 attempts by phone, email, whatever contact you want to use, text message, to get full confidence that you have exhausted the attempts of converting that client with a high confidence interval. So 6 times for every single potential client is really unsustainable for you as a single human being. The third thing is about setting expectations. So if you, in the beginning, are setting the expectation with these clients who you're working with right now that you're going to be responsive, God help you if you're answering calls with your personal cell phone number, and dealing with unknown numbers, not knowing if they're spam or if it's a great potential client, what ends up happening is over time, those people who you were delivering that level of service to continue to expect that, but your bandwidth and your ability to deliver actually goes down. So if you start out sort of like fake it till you make it, where you have someone who is handling your calls, or you automate on your website, not staffing it yourself, but actually having an AI chat that responds, or whatever the case may be, outsourcing it, or even bringing someone in part-time, you have the ability to have a system you're building right now to scale. And I think Carol Williams is still here, and she said something great in an AILA webinar we did for immigration attorneys, which is that she looks at software and services that she can grow into. And I think that that's something that's not often espoused enough.
I just want to check in with Seth because I can't see if you're raising your hand. Do you have any input on this question?
I mean, I think everything that everybody's, thrown out there so far, that the idea of adding automation for efficiencies are great. I think that most of the time, the answer is depends, and that the higher the price point and the more dear it is to get a lead in, that the personal touch sometimes can outweigh automation. Automation's getting better and better. And if you are not going to touch somebody, I'm a fan of automation rather than nothing. But if the value of a client is such that you can afford something that may be old school and not automation, that I'm a big fan of staying away from a drip when a phone call could convert somebody. And that's sort of the cost benefit that I struggle with my own firm.
All right, very good. So I'm going to close out this question with just a final summary of what I understood from all the panelists. And what that is, Mike, is that automation is the key to not dropping the ball. Automation is the key to stepping up the game with your customer service and providing a stellar experience for your client, but not at the expense of completely eliminating the client relationship between the attorney and the client. So there is a time and place for those in-person conversations, and you need to think really carefully about where is the best use of that time to make that the biggest and most impactful time together with the client. I can tell you personally, I engaged an IP firm in order to protect the Law Firm Growth Summit brand, and they're almost completely automated. I had an initial conversation with the attorney at the front end of it, and any other conversation happened through their CRM chat feature. So although there was a point in time where there was a back and forth that I said, you know what, this would have been nice to just get on the phone and get this resolved instead of being back and forth for 3 days in a chat conversation. At the same time, I recognized that every time I sent a message, I got a response within a few hours. So I really felt like they were on top of my business, even though they probably are serving a bunch of other clients at the same time. So I do think that the consumer also understands what's going on. And if you make sure that you get the right balance between the automation and the hand-holding, and remember that conversations through other mediums are not eliminating the client touch. So if you're talking to them through email or chat, although it's not personal, it's still better than nothing. So the biggest gripe that people have with their attorney relationship is I send them a message and 3 weeks later I get a response. And this, that's where automation can really help you to eliminate that feeling and to make them feel like you're on top of it, even if it's not a direct in-person thing. So Mike, do you have any further follow-up questions?
No, I don't think so. Great feedback. Appreciate the insight from everyone.
Have you been enjoying the show? We sure hope so. To make sure you never miss an episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player app. Next week, we will be back with more valuable resources and ideas on how to break the mold and take your law firm to the next level.